world is changing fast. New technologies are impacting how we think about products, services, and the way we live our lives. Nowhere is this trend more present than in financial services, where new business models and customer expectations are changing our conceptions about banking, finance, and the very nature of money. Welcome to Rebank, a visionary podcast about banking, fintech, and the future. The future of banking is here. Hello and welcome to Rebank. I'm your host, Will Beeson. This episode is different. It's part of a conversation I had with three smart and experienced entrepreneurs and thinkers who happen to work in fintech. Maybe I'll release the extended version of the discussion at some point, but today I wanted to focus on a part of it. Artificial intelligence and automation are becoming powerful forces of change in the world, and the impacts of these technologies will shape the next few decades at least. I had this conversation with Charlie Delingpole, Knox, and Lex Sokolin. Charlie is the founder and CEO of ComplyAdvantage, a data company leveraging machine learning to identify bad actors and feed that information to bank anti-money laundering and compliance teams to prevent crime. Ricky is the founder and CEO of Tandem, a UK bank using data to provide personalized financial guidance to customers. And Lex is the former founder and CEO of NestEgg Wealth, a roboadvisor that was acquired in 2014. Currently, Lex runs the emerging tech business for Autonomous Research, a buy-side research firm. We pick the conversation up in full swing. Buckle your seatbelts. It gets serious fast. I'm going to publish an accompanying article with a number of the talking points that inspired this discussion at www.bankingthefuture.com/artificial intelligence. Lex and his team recently published an excellent deep dive on AI, which I'll link to in the show notes. Lex also publishes one of the best fintech newsletters around, which again I'll link to in the show notes. I'd love to share more of these types of conversations, from meetups and private events and the like, if people find them interesting. Let me know what you think on Twitter @RebankPodcast or by email at will.beeson@bankingthefuture.com. One last thing before we dive in, to help you match voices with names, the first voice you'll hear in the conversation is mine, followed by Lex's, Charlie's, and then Ricky's. Thank you very much for joining us today. Please welcome Lex Sokolin, Knox, and Charlie Delingpole. So I personally think both outcomes you guys are describing, like the one where machines just take over the world and we humans let them do what they will and become completely obsolete as a species, and the concept of it's going to be the augmented human, supported by technology working in symbiosis to do things better. I think either one is possible, but it kind of requires a bit of foresight that doesn't appear to exist yet in the market in terms of what people are building, how people are thinking these things through. I mean, if you look at it from the traditional, purely profit maximizing standpoint, well, you probably do arrive at it's only machines and humans are kind of unemployed and relatively meaningless. I don't know if we somehow inject a healthier angle to it and realize that we as a species, if we want to survive, kind of need to manage this a bit more actively. Then I think you can get to a very interesting symbiotic place.
Charlie, when you price your product, your machine learning perfect terrorist decision machine, relative to the human version of that, are you cheaper or more expensive?
Roughly the same.
Roughly the same. So that's not the answer that sets up my next point, which is fine. Which is fine. Actually, I'll twist it a little bit. So my thesis, and it's not super original, is that what we should see is broad revenue collapse across all industries as software does more of it, right? So if you look at media. As media became digitized over the last 20 years, revenues went down 50%. And then slowly over time, the remainder of the revenues went from printing CDs and selling physical objects to being digital subscription, right? So kind of 50% down, and then the rest is digital. Similar things are happening with retail, with Amazon, where the revenues are digital. And I think in finance, we'll see similar things. So I guess my thesis is that once you make it so that the manufacturing of the thing, whether it's financial product or distribution, it has a marginal cost of zero, right? You're going to start to have competition and prices will go down. Until we get there, right, there's only one ComplyAdvantage. Until we get to a place where that's really competitive, you might be able to take economic rents and charge more than everybody. Charge the same as the human version, but then have more profitability built in. But in the long run, like, costs go down, but shouldn't revenues go down as well?
No, but I think there's a massive misnomer. I'm an economist by training, and the economy is the sum of human endeavor. So it's the sum of the productivity of the humans in the system. And computers make humans more productive. So each human is producing more units of output, therefore GDP goes up, not down. Now, there is all sorts of transitional issues around that. So you go and close down the coal mines, you got a lot of unproductive humans that are hanging around not doing very much, until their kids all go and become computer programmers and go and start doing something completely different. But the point is that in the long run, if we take this in at least sort of 50-year chunks rather than like worrying about a 10-year chunk, any particular 10 years, then the economy, this concept of revenue going down, what we're actually talking about is utility per consumer dollar going up, rather than revenue going down. You're looking at it from a corporate perspective. But if we look at it from a perspective of what are the goods, the positive goods and services that humans are able to consume, and what are the goods and services that are produced in the economy, the answer is you have more produced per unit of human and more consumed per unit of human.
How many units of human are consumed in your scenario?
I love consuming humans. No, but the machine doesn't consume any. Because more, well, if you look at it from a human perspective, the machine leverages the humans, so you're able to produce more. And yes, absolutely, there is transitional unemployment that potentially there, but these humans will go on to do other stuff similarly leveraged by machines. So, Will Beeson's factory has just gone from 50 people to one Will Beeson managing a whole load of machines. Those other 50 people will eventually get replaced in other, maybe inferior to Will's factory, but in other factories that are doing slightly more menial jobs, applying the skills that they do have to control, well, not to say control machines, but to work with machines to produce more output. And that output will then be consumed by everybody who gets more consumption. And the only way where that paradigm flips is if the machines become more intelligent than humans and start controlling the humans and enslave the humans for the productivity of the machines. But machines being logical beings will presumably produce more machines, not more humans. So they might exterminate the humans because they're a bit of a waste of time, but they're unlikely to leave a whole lot of completely unfed and desperate humans around the outside.
I mean, I agree with. I don't.
Sorry, just to take the argument to its ultimate end point.
100% in the sense that we'll all be just a Dyson sphere around the sun, swapping atoms back and forth. I do think on the way there are some really interesting questions. The place where the arguments are consistent is so you look at agriculture, and everybody's in agriculture, and then agriculture is 10% and everyone's in manufacturing, right? These 50-year chunks or 100-year chunks. And then everyone's in manufacturing, and then manufacturing is down, and now everybody's in services. So today we're all in services. And if you take the argument that you believe in AI and what it does, then services go down, and then there is the question mark. And so I think it's entertainment. I actually think it's like Twitch streaming and video games and social influencing. But I'd love to hear what other people think will be there once services gets eaten away.
So, I mean, in terms of kind of bridging the gap between sociology and science fiction, like Karl Marx, like 100 years ago, was saying how after a communist revolution, whereby the inefficiencies of capitalism were erased, then at that point you could fish in the morning, write poetry in the evening, and you have this utopian society because in Ray Kurzweil's terms, you have the whole abundance generation, right? Which is a positive aspirational state of society. At the kind of dystopian end, you have the Matrix and computers taking over society. But I think probably in terms of ploughing the middle furrow between Lex and Ricky on those, you probably have a kind of gentle transition. I mean, technology has brought us Clippy the paperclip and Internet Explorer 6 and all this like crap, right?
I still use all of those because I work for a financial institution regulated by the FCA.
Oh, yes, those Clippy.
The position that Ricky's articulating is to the extent that things take time and we'll get there in the end. And I think collectively, hopefully, we're kind of building this new society which doesn't have people constantly going through boring menial tasks, and people can shift to more interesting work and slowly try and build a future. I mean, the best way to predict the future is to create it, right? And the future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed. I mean, you have like, people in Africa who are still farmers, and you although we might live in this kind of bubble of technology in London where we're obsessed by, the vast majority of people are still in this kind of state of society which is heavily outside this bubble, right? So I think, although it's cool going from like LA to Crypto Valley to all these places, I think it'll definitely take some time.
I think that's a really good point, because what kind of gets lost in a lot of this thinking is basically the cost of replacement of human labor with machine. And there are reasons why people are still doing like non-irrigated farming in less developed parts of the world, because it doesn't make sense to drop like a multi-million-dollar piece of farm machinery or fleet of pieces of farm machinery in to do the work. Does it make sense to replace the McDonald's worker who's earning minimum wage with a machine that right now costs millions of dollars? Does it make sense to replace the specialist neurosurgeon or partner at the law firm? Potentially the economics start to work there. So I think it's, to Charlie's point, not going to happen everywhere at the same time, all professions to the same extent. In answer to Lex's question from before, what fills that gap as services go away? I mean, it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but in my view, we probably haven't invented it yet. If you thought about farming going away and manufacturing replacing that, pre-industrial revolution, it didn't exist.
Didn't know about the manufacturing.
And I feel like the nature of human creativity and ingenuity will mean that humans with more free time on their hands create pastimes, pursuits, endeavors for which they can leverage machines to support. But I don't know. In your view, Lex, like I buy your argument around how you can recreate or even anticipate what the next Picasso might paint, and you can program a machine, you can design a machine, you can make a machine that makes another machine even better than we could ever make it that anticipates the next Picasso. But can you build AI that outpaces humans in terms of anticipating what the next area of human pursuit, interest, development will likely be?
Yeah, so I don't feel, I can't make that claim strongly, and I don't think we're anywhere close to general artificial intelligence, because we don't know how the brain works. And really, when we talk about AI, it's just a little bit of self-adjusting math sitting on top of the internet. So I think we're pretty good. We're getting pretty good at narrow AI. And what narrow AI cannot do is it is not a monkey that has evolved over millions of years with particular needs and particular functions that derive like our utility functions, that derive how our society is formed and what we find valuable, right? So it is, to me, AI is just it's like a megaphone, the same way that fire and language and any electricity or the web, any technology is a megaphone for human instincts and interests, except it's a megaphone that can get way louder than anything else. What I worry about in this thinking of we've done it before going through transitions and we'll do it again is that we really have like a data set of 5, that or 3 or 4. And we're trying to extrapolate from a really small data set. It just so happens that the first transaction took thousands of years, and the next one took a couple of hundred, and the next one took 50, and now things are moving faster and faster. So I'm pretty uncomfortable about the other side in terms of finding something productive. And sifting through current trends, the only thing that really jumps out at me that's fundamentally different from the types of economies and industries, when I was growing up, is what young people are doing with social media, video, entertainment, and kind of influencing, right? So it sounds dumb to say it out loud, but like there's so much economic activity about kids watching kids play video games, about social media followers monetizing all that.
But isn't this about human contact? I mean, so for example, humans love human contact. In a funny way, nobody listens to the podcast if they weren't interested in it. So humans are interested in other humans, and so in extremis in the dystopian future, no, but I still take the view, obviously, that unless the machines become more intelligent than the humans and win in some sense, until then they're leverage for humans, and therefore we get to do more stuff that hopefully we enjoy more and other people enjoy. So it may be that it takes an awfully long time to build a machine that can entertain Will Beeson. And maybe it takes a little bit less time to build a machine that can entertain Lex. But either way, either way, that there will be there'll be a role for humans in entertaining other humans. Coming back to your entertainment paradigm, but I think there will also be very specific things that the human brain is better at than, in the same way, like, when you're choosing an algorithm for a particular application or a technology for a particular application, all those technologies are different. And, AI is very different from blockchain. It has different advantages, different strengths, different weaknesses. When you're choosing, and a human is in a way another technology. And so there'll be applications where that's really useful, which that is really useful for. But if you look at things from a human-centric perspective, those humans will be gamefully employed. And they may be sitting there going, yeah, I like that. I don't like that. Because actually they're helping to design for other humans who are better off than them, like what humans like and don't like. But there are many, there are lots of things that are unique about the technology that is us and our brains. And as you say, we're an awfully long way off figuring out that has no unique advantages over all these other technologies.
So I've got to jump in there. I'm sorry, everybody else. So yes, but... And this isn't my point, and I forget if it's Kevin Kelly or it's the dude who wrote Homo Deus, but the point is this.
Yes, I think it's Kevin Kelly. If I was going to say that, you are.
So the point is this. Horses are really good at transportation, right? They were our transportation for centuries and centuries. And in addition to transportation, horses have an emotional bond with people, right? So not only do you get to ride the horse, but you get to name the horse, you get to love the horse, and you get to feed the horse, and all these things where there are these adjacent benefits of forming the relationship with the horse. And that's all nice and great, but when the car came around, the car was 10 times better than the horse at transportation, and no matter what all these adjacent side benefits, for the use case of transportation, it was the car. And so now in terms of horse population, it's not so great, right? It's just We took the thing that does it best.
But again, you're coming from a non-human centric perspective. So if you assume we were horses, then yeah, that's a problem. But if you assume we're humans, we're just choosing the best thing that was a best outcome for humans. And the truth is, the humans have been incredibly dominant. And actually, to go back to Harari, actually what we're talking about is Homo sapiens was extremely dominant, because actually all these other species got killed by Homo sapiens. So we have been the dominant species on this planet for an awfully long time, and I think it'll be quite I hazard to predict. And I'd hazard to predict that we'll still be the most powerful force on this planet for a long time to come, because I think that we probably do have the intelligence not to create the things that will kill us, and any other outcome than us being killed means everything revolves around us, and therefore, okay, sure, we may use and abuse horses. Some people still like riding them, but we will control the machines. They don't control us.
So the thing, Lex, I thought you were going to say in reference to one of the comments Ricky made earlier was, and I'm pretty sure it is Kevin Kelly, who talks about all the various types of intelligence that we maybe haven't paid enough attention to yet. It's like we as humans reason in generally one way, and we have unique intelligences, and maybe social skills is one, and our mind works in a way such that our perception of reality and experience of the world and the things that we can do and that we're good at is in our minds kind of all there is to it. But maybe if you step outside that and get a bit more perspective, it's actually maybe only a narrow segment of all the potential types of intelligence. And for instance, if you have a quantum computer can break these 128 whatever it is bit encryption, well, that's great. That's the type of intelligence we don't have. That's a tool. Are there other types of intelligence that humans don't have that machines can be designed to do? Are we potentially expanding the universe of what intelligence is, what it means, what we can create, what we can build, what we can do by bringing new intelligence to play? Charlie,
Charlie, I'll drone on until you want to interrupt me anytime. Just please. So we've transitioned from a trillion of finance people gainfully unemployed to the science fiction scenarios, which I think are at the core of the anxiety of this unemployment, right? Like there's this math software that's going to make people more productive in the short term, and that's separate from, I think, this existential question. There are two initiatives that I know of thinking about this well, which is the OpenAI initiative from Musk and Bezos, where it's how do you build an AI that's friendly, right? That takes human interests into account. And then there's the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, which has been around for a while, which asks the question, not even how do you make it friendly, but how do you make it have a human utility function in the mix? Because it's, from a math perspective, it's actually quite difficult to design something because, again, we're monkeys with a millennia of evolution, and we can't even articulate our utility functions. So that is quite difficult. And I think we certainly are we're building something that is unlike us. And the way I kind of think about it is think about anthills and beehives. So there's the individual agent, which is the ant or the bee, and then there's the superorganism. So if you're into bees, you don't care about the bees, you care about the health of the hive. So you care about the superorganism, and you measure that. And in the same way, you can think of humanity as a superorganism or a city as a superorganism, and you have to think about humanity's achievements and sort of evolutionary competitiveness. And so what's kind of weird for me is when we interact with machine intelligence, it is comparing an underwriting algorithm for insurance versus a particular underwriter is wrong, because we have to compare like humanity's ability to have a skill, like the peak of humanity's ability to have a skill, and then the machine version of that. So in the short to medium term, humans will definitely be better than the superorganism of software. There's no question about it. when humans collectively versus the software collectively become competitive, I think is the part that Ricky, you were talking about, where it's like
the killing bit.
It's the grinder. Yeah.
But, all right. But so to reel us back in a little bit, because I feel like
keep it going from the future. I like it.
I feel like we may be potentially overblowing some of this. Not because I disagree with what we're saying, but because I feel like time moves much more slowly over the long term than people think. Changes are often less immediate and impactful than we anticipate over a long period of time. I'm sure people are having similar conversations as they were phasing out of farming and into manufacturing, and out of manufacturing and into services. But we're still here. Charlie's company, right, ComplyAdvantage, is the one at the table that is literally applying machine intelligence to a traditionally human task, is solving a tremendous problem right now. Like, it's better, faster, cheaper, more scalable, constantly up than the current solution. Like, it's solving a tremendous problem. So sure, maybe there's a bit of tension from short term to long term, but you can't get away from the fact that solving these important problems are really, at the end of the day, like what kind of gets us up in the morning and what we set out to do, right?
The immediate short-term pressure will be demographic, to the extent that, like, you know, if you have a 1.21 fertility rate in Japan and like similar across Europe, right? As it stands now, this corresponds precisely with the great baby boomer die-off, right? And suddenly you're going to need tons of people to come into the labour market to kind of overcome people who have left the labour market, right? So, like, I was in Japan 3 weeks ago, right? Huge automation, wherever they can, a robot. Traditionally, they had 24-hour society. They had all these kind of different things which relied on automation, but it's impossible to hire people. And I think fairly soon we'll find this kind of demographic shift having very negative very negative repercussions upon ability to hire. I mean, you already have the B word in London here, and so I think it's going to be a very desirable and necessary aid in the short term to us in terms of the demographic and therefore recruitment challenges that we all face.
What can people do to be better at this, to skill up? Like, when you look at hiring people that can help you build the company, what do those people have to look like?
I mean, I think people often say, oh, AI, ML, but in fact, part of the reason why the transition has been delayed and why it's taking so long is because there's such a huge shortage in terms of, we're now at the apex of the Gartner hype cycle. I think some of our people get tons of emails every single day from potential people who almost tourists to the whole AI, ML industry and are merely interested in passing and seeing how it might be applied. So therefore, we'll try and use interviews as free R&D. So the kind of ML engineers, extremely hard to come by, extremely expensive as a consequence. Not only as a prerequisite, you have to understand programming, but then also you have to have huge amounts of experience. And perhaps for the more extreme edges of AI, you have to have done some sort of apprenticeship underneath someone who themselves invented the industry. So in terms of deployment and build out and application, a huge shortage, right? So and in terms of the different methods, applications, the sheer range and diversity of different techniques and how disparate they are. And in terms of investment, you might spend 9 months, a year trying a new technique and get low accuracy and recall on the algorithm, right? So it's super hardcore, which is partly why I chose to do it, because there's no point doing something easy.
Love it. Well, I feel like that's as good a place as any to end, because with that level of human resilience, like we're destined to rule forever. So. Right. And we have an appointment at the pub, don't we? Ricky, Charlie, and Lex, I think you guys have all been on the podcast before, but very quickly, Tandem Bank, ComplyAdvantage, and Autonomous Research. We'll link to them all in the show notes. Get in touch with these guys. They know what they're talking about. Thanks for joining. This was a great time.
Thanks a lot, Will.
Great to be here. Thanks for tuning into Rebank. If you like today's show, reach out. Follow us on Twitter at Rebank Podcast and join the conversation. For more on banking, fintech, and the future, check out our regular content at www.bankingthefuture.com.